Next, Mr. Periklis Kyrtsis will be addressed by Mr. Montemayor.
Okay. I would like to take a little bit of time to, since it's probably the first time that Valeo is written and shown in the university, so just to give a bit of context so that I can really highlight what Periklis did for us in Valeo. Valeo is an automotive supplier. We have more than 110,000 employees all over the world. And in Bietigheim-Bissingen, next to Stuttgart, we have an R&D center for advanced driving assistance systems, where we make market-leading sensors such as laser scanner, radars, ultrasonics, and in the case of where Periklis joined us, in front camera department, where I also work. The main thing in developing our front camera is, as we need to do it for every OEM that we work for, is that we have to develop different tool chains. And the tool chains need to help us validate all across our V-cycle. So starting from software-in-the-loop tools that need to simulate what our camera sees in the road and allows us to validate what our software implementation has, all the way to recording tools that we need to install on cars and use to drive around the world and collect hundreds of thousands of kilometers of data, as well as then hardware-in-the-loop tools that allows us to replay what we have already recorded and use it to either debug, investigate, or confirm whether we have fixed the problems that we have faced. And also replay tools that we can really use, that we can test and work as fast as possible, since the automotive industry doesn't wait. Usually the timelines get shorter, the demands get higher, and it creates a lot of problems. These tools need to be compatible with one another. They need to be robust to work on the harshest conditions, but they also need to be flexible enough that we can adapt them to our different customer, to the different needs that we have. And this is where it gets very difficult. Still, in our front camera department, and because of the increasing business we have had in the last few years, we were forced to develop tools in parallel. We didn't have enough time to develop, let's say, single solution for our validation tools, because we had projects running at the same time. We had conflicting requirements, and we just had to, at the time, just divide our teams and develop the tools in parallel and just live with that. Of course, at the time, this worked because we could keep our projects running, but in the long-term solution, we cannot keep doing that. Otherwise, we just keep reinventing the wheel every time we have a new project, and of course, that's not sustainable. So that was a big problem we were facing, but okay, in the case of Periklis, it created an opportunity for him. So the question which Periklis had to answer was very simply stated. So what should be the tool we use? What should be the solution we can use that can be flexible enough for us to implement it, that we can still play with it and adapt it for the conflicting requirements we sometimes get for different car makers, and that we can use it on our newer projects, and also that we can keep using it and evolve it to the future. As I said, it's easier said, just tell us what is the best, but to answer it, it was not simple. Periklis, or Peri, he had to show, and he did, extraordinary communication, listening, and analytical skills, because he had to gather a lot of information which we have in our teams, which are spread. We have teams spread over 5 different countries, 3 different continents. People from different backgrounds, people from different cultures, which is, it takes a lot of skill to be able to gather the right information, to not antagonize people, and you need to take into account that these are people that are currently working on production projects, so it's not that they are just waiting for the phone to ring. You need to persuade them, you need to talk to them, you have to insist, you have to get the information out of it. Even myself, I have a hard time doing that. But he managed to do this. He managed to collect information from all our tool chains, which is something that nobody before in Valeo managed to do. And not only he did that, but then he did the requirements analysis for what the tool chains should do. And also using, let's say, the best practices and the best lessons learned we've had, he came up with an architecture proposal for how our tool chain should look like. This architecture proposal is now, let's say, to be piloted in one of our newer development projects, which for me, I think it's the most important. I think the biggest value that you can have as being a PDEng graduate is to know that what you build in your final project is actually going to be used. You know, that is not just going to be taken, put in a drawer, And maybe someday we might look at it again. But actually, for me, one of the requirements when getting PDE and getting grades is that what they make, it should be something we can use. Otherwise, what's the point? So I'm very happy to hear that from his learnings, we are actually putting them in use in our production projects. That means they are going to impact our customers and what we do on a day-to-day work, which I think it's the most valuable part. Also, to mention one of the last achievements he also made for our hardware in the loop system, the user interface and the pipes library implementation, which is also going to be part of this pilot project, which we will have, which I think it's quite good. Of course, there's still a lot of work to be done, and the work will continue. So I think that explains a bit how complex the challenges that Periklis had to face were. But those were not the only challenges. So there were, let's call it, logistic challenges. So even before he started, it took us a bit longer than planned to set up a working contract between Valeo, being a German company, and the university. Periklis joined somewhere at the end of January, where he could finally be in our office in Wittenheim. Then, of course, we had to sit you down in our team leader's office because we were in the middle of a layout change, so office space was very limited, which is a constant problem in Germany, I will say. But he was sitting with two very experienced guys, were system teams lead and software team lead, so I hope you managed to learn a few things from them. I have learned myself a lot from them. And lastly, I want to apologize that some of our colleagues in Czech Republic confused your email, and they were calling you TUE for quite some time. Because in the email addresses in Valeo, usually the first part you find on the email address is the first name. But for Periklis and Grace, the first part was TUE, then dot the name, and then dot the last name. And they didn't know that, and I think you were too polite to correct them at the beginning. Yeah, sorry about that. But I want to thank you for your time, for your patience, and your hard work. And I can say that in front camera, we were very happy to have you with us. Please keep developing your communication, your analytical, and your programming skills, and I have no doubt that you will succeed in any business, whether that is in Valeo, which we will see in the next weeks, or somewhere else.